And we were actually in LA at Gold's when I got the email of my labs that had come back. And I start checking and I'm like, uh-oh. A disclaimer and a warning to anybody that's about to watch this video. The views and opinions in this video are just that, views and opinions. Everything you see is going to be done for research and entertainment purposes only. I do not advise nor condone the use of anything you're about to see in this video. Everything is just for entertainment purposes only. Whatever you do with the information you get from this video is all up to you, but ultimately, don't be stupid. All right, Doc, tell me the truth. How long do I have left?
Man, you're doing good. Well, first of all, I'm not a doctor. I have a lot of doctor friends. That's how I know about lab work. And, I had a mentor in 2006 that taught me all about labs, hairy-eyed near. But yeah, Andrew, I know you were pretty concerned. And let's look, labs can be a little bit concerning, but they're just, these things change over time, right? So you can change your diet, your lifestyle, everything, SARMs and all that. And I'll just say I'm not anti-androgen. We've talked about on the podcast before with Mark and Nsima. I've done 3 big cycles back in college. I don't use anymore. Trying to optimize everything I can do in my life. And I understand if people want to use or do SARMs, I have no judgment, but we just want to be mindful. And actually, right when you were just starting this, you had sent me your labs and your initial labs, I think. And one thing that I started to notice, and we actually see that it's trending high, is, one thing that androgens and it seems that SARMs do is make our blood more thick. And that can then lead to cardiovascular disease. A lot of doctors are focused on cholesterol, and your lipids and cholesterol did change, not in a good way. We'll talk about that. But what concerns me more, and I'm glad you're kind of changing things up a little bit, is your elevated iron and MCV, MCH, some of these other hemoglobin, hematocrit, which that really, the viscosity of blood is what a lot of new science is suggesting is what creates some of the vascular damage that over time leads to the stenosis or narrowing of the arteries and creates things that you see in people that unfortunately, can have heart disease like congestive heart failure and left ventricular hypertrophy. So let's just go down the list and you'll probably show a screenshot of this or whatnot.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then
cool, Andrew. So go ahead.
As you say, so just like to simplify things, those like the hematocrit levels and all that jumped out at you. What's a good example of like a high level, right? Because like when we spoke on the phone, you gave me a really good example of like the guys that were in the Tour de France compared to my labs, which was like really eye opening.
Yeah, so the guys in the Tour de France, they're blood doping, right? So they're getting external sources of blood. So, in an endurance event like the Tour de France, you want a high hematocrit. So your hematocrit pre and post, just give people numbers, you went from 45 to over 50. Now, that's towards the higher upper tolerable limit. If your hematocrit went 55, 56, we might be concerned. Now, to give people an idea, that's like, the viscosity. If anyone that's changed their oil or worked on a car or a motorcycle, high viscous oils, that means your blood back then, hopefully it's probably changed even just in the last few weeks, it's less viscous. So that just means there's less little shear stress on the arterial system. So this is a great, and this happens to a lot of athletes. If you eat red meats, which I recommend, if you're lifting weights, if you're exerting yourself, if you have even high normal testosterone before androgens or SARMs, your hematocrit and hemoglobin and red blood cell are going to be higher. And so that just predisposes us to thicker blood. It's more shear stress on the system. So we need to be mindful of that. So here's a cool, simple tip. And I recommend anyone even doing HRT, donate blood. And so for Andrew, yourself, you gave me a little insight. If it's cool that we talk about your familial risk, your father, had an operation, right? Predisposed to heart disease. Potentially there's a genetic factor for you, Andrew. But for men in general, right, we're prone to thicker blood. So yeah, your hematocrit over 50%. So that means that 50% of your blood is these red blood cells. And so look, if you're going to go like do an Ironman or like a Tour de France, an endurance event, it's like, okay, that's cool. Then after that, donate blood because we want to get that down. Because powerlifting, it's short duration. It's a glycolytic sport. There's no need to have thick blood like that.
Got it.
So that stood out to me. What else we got? We got the red blood cell over 5. So it's not the major thing. The RDW 13.5. So it's not crazy, but those are kind of the clusters. So when we look at labs, I just want people to kind of think about this. You want to look at things in clusters, not just is your cholesterol high or low? It's like we want to look at the pattern, and we'll get to that metabolic pattern in a minute. So again, the RBC, the hemoglobin, hematocrit, RDW, the hemoglobin, hematocrit are the ones that did elevate. Again, so potentially the SARM cycle that you did in your diet would be helpful. I'm not necessarily promoting this for endurance events, but based upon your labs, it might be a good cycle for someone that wants to enhance their endurance output, their VO2 max potentially and stuff. So let's kind of talk about the cardiometabolic stuff that did shift. So again, just to summarize, the approach for you, Andrew, and anyone listening: high RDW, hemoglobin, hematocrit, donate blood. Start once every, say, 4 months. It's free. You're helping humanity, and it's actually good. So the turnover or the churn when you kind of deplete your body's red blood cells, it's like it's a restorative type phenomenon. So you're creating fresh new red blood cells, and you're stimulating erythropoietin from the kidneys. So it's a good thing.
And is it for anybody that is on SARMs, like is it's totally safe to donate that type of blood?
All right. So I can't really give this advice, but if you're injecting anabolics and you don't know where the anabolics are coming from, they're going to ask you, have you gotten a tattoo in the last year? Are you taking IV drugs or drugs? So that's your own ethical. I can't tell you what decisions you should or shouldn't do in that case. Right. So presumably people are taking high quality stuff and not getting it from who knows where labs and who knows where, then so that's just an ethical thing that people need to decide themselves.
But that's for injecting, right? But like an oral something where nothing breaks the skin.
Exactly right. So I don't think taking it, because you're getting first pass hepatic metabolism and all that. So I think with that, me personally, I would feel comfortable donating my blood, because again, they're doing filtration, they're testing stuff too. And you're talking about someone that probably needs the blood because they're really sick anyhow. And so you're giving them really thick, nice blood, right?
Yeah. They're going to get hooked up with some good stuff.
Yeah, man. I love it. And if we go to page 3 on your labs, which I think show your insulin, that was the thing that, again, insulin is not the end all be all, but presumably, and you were fasting for both these tests, right?
Correct.
So we're comparing apples. All right. So we're comparing apples to apples. So fasting insulin should never really be high. It's just one of these things that, if fasting insulin is high, that just, it's an indicator that potentially there's some insulin resistance developing, or so-called hyperinsulinemia. And so let's just give people some ideas, some numbers. So your insulin fasting went from 1.9, I'm sorry, 3.8. I was looking at progesterone, 3.8 to over 10. So it increased 4-fold. So not necessarily a good thing. Now, was that the growth hormone specific SARM? Was that your diet? Well, we know that resistance training improves insulin sensitivity. So it probably wasn't that your training increased that. It's probably the combination of the SARMs. And I don't know all the details about the SARMs that you were taking, for example. But here's the thing. In 12 weeks, is it a big concern? Probably not. But would you want this situation to go on for the next 10 years where you have really high levels of insulin? Because, all the cardiometabolic diseases that cause issues and premature death and mortality and stuff like that are insulin related. So not necessarily a favorable thing. But then we want to look at this in context. We want to look at insulin. We want to look at your liver enzymes, triglyceride, and lipids, and see what the overall signature is. So it's not just one lab. We want to look at all that. So what we see is your 3 liver enzymes everyone should know about: your AST, ALT, and GGT, right? And then we also look at alkaline phosphatase in there. So your GGT didn't really move, so that's a good thing. And let me just pause. Why do we look at the liver enzymes? Well, we want to see, in the situation of hyperinsulinemia, is the liver getting more fat infiltration or fatty liver? So GGT didn't really increase, but I do think your AST, where is it on here? Page 2. Sorry for maybe you can cut this out.
No worries, man.
Okay, so your ALT increased by 10 points. Not crazy, but again, this was a short period of time. So, does it mean you have fatty liver? No. But does it mean that this picture is potentially developing, that if you kept doing the same stuff for 5-10 years, it could be problematic? Yeah, potentially, because we looked at the ALT increased, and then what we saw too is your triglycerides were really low, and then they jumped up a little bit. It's not concerning. It went from 37 to 56, not a big deal. But again, if you didn't change anything and continued what you're doing for 10 years, could it be problematic? Yes. And then what would the third kind of cluster is, we want to look at your HDL and LDL. And so what we see here is, and I think, Andrew, this was what you were most concerned about, is your HDL dropped by over 60%, right? High density lipoprotein, the so-called protective or good cholesterol, it's involved in reverse cholesterol transport. HDL has antioxidant enzymes. Like, the HDL does a lot of cool stuff. Now, one thing that I explained to you kind of on the phone is, look, without doing advanced lipoprotein particle testing, so what people are seeing on their screen now, LDL, HDL, these are just actually estimates based upon this Friedwald equation. If you really want to take a deep dive into all the different personalities and the lipoprotein particles, there's 3 different subtypes of HDL. There's multiple flavors of LDL, VLDL. There's remnant lipoproteins. There's big and small LDL. So it's like, we have an okay picture, and we have enough to recommend probably some changes into what you're doing, but it's not like, oh my gosh, you're going to, all of a sudden you caused heart disease. So for anyone listening, if they see changes in their lipoproteins, i.e. LDL and HDL, I recommend it to you and anyone. There's a Boston Heart Lab, there's Berkeley Heart Lab, there's looking at apolipoprotein B to apolipoprotein A1 ratios. All these things are they're not much more expensive. And if you're getting your blood drawn anyway, I recommend doing it. So yeah, your lipids change a little bit, but it's not that crazy. Andrew, we can get your HDL jacked right up. It's no problem.
Cool.
But here's the thing. Here's for me, the biggest concern was your ferritin and your iron. Now, so just to give you everyone some perspective, Andrew's ferritin, which is stored iron, went from 387 to 690. And so, again, if you're an endurance athlete, probably a good thing short term, but this is not good, because iron is a pro-oxidant, and it's been linked with creating dementia, exacerbating Alzheimer's disease, all these things. And it's another contributor to that thick coagulant blood, the hypercoagulant blood and viscous blood that we talked about. So again, the recommendation to drop that iron down is the same thing that we talked about with the high hemoglobin hematocrit, RDW. So donating blood. And look, as a male, you're not menstruating like, as women menstruate every month. They're able to dump their iron. And that's why, actually, if you look at the risk of disease in premenopausal women versus postmenopausal women, it's speculated that it could be due to iron overload after menopause because they're not menstruating. So donating blood it's a good practice. Anyone doing gear or not gear, SARMs or not SARMs, if you want to be proactive about your health, I suggest donating blood. So Andrew, yeah, those are some of the things. I mean, there's other interesting things. I mean, looking at your sex hormone binding globulin change, I mean, that is kind of fascinating. I don't know what to make of that. I'm sure Tony can speak to that.
Yeah, he had some concerns about that as well. So what exactly is that marker for?
Yeah, so SHGB. So we have these different binding globulins that are floating around in our blood, and albumin is one of them. So thyroid hormone, testosterone, like these things, a very small percentage of these hormones and mediators exist in the free state. They're usually bound up to binding globulins, and for whatever reason, your SHGB, the binding globulin, dropped dramatically. Now, that, some people could look at that as the favorable thing. You're like, wow, you have a lot more free testosterone, but what happens is if there's too much free testosterone, then these things can aromatize or interconvert to other metabolites. The body is trying to maintain a balance. So I didn't look at the estradiol or estrogen or anything. I can look at that as we're talking right now. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much that's changed and so forth, but it's just such a big swing. Normally we see changes, obviously with gear or SARMs or HCG or Clomid, you're going to see changes in SHGB, but that was a massive one. So, I did look at your albumin to see if there was other changes in hormone binding globulins like albumin. It changed by 1/10 of a point, so nothing major.
Yeah. One thing that I was really concerned about, and I'm sure everyone watching, is my total testosterone. it wasn't very high to start with. It was at 545, but it plummeted down to 151. So now I want to talk about like the total and free, like what's what exactly, because even I'm still trying to figure that stuff out. But what do you make of that big drop in test?
I think it's just end feedback inhibition, you know, and so whether it's, and again, I'm not a SARMs expert at all, as you know, but you know, when I inject myself with steroids, you know, back when I was 19 years old, man, my free dumped too, right? Because the body sees that, you know, it's the pituitary, the hypothalamus, the higher order brain centers that govern hormonal output and regulation, see this exogenous form, whether it's eventually maybe coming from a SARM and so forth, and it's going to slow down production. And so, yeah, I think it's super interesting. I mean, we wouldn't have expected such a drop in the testosterone. And I would, you know, given the SARMs that you were on and stuff like that, we would have thought that the free would have increased, especially with the drop in sex hormone binding globulin. I mean, it would seem to me that the free should be a lot higher, but it only increased by 0.4 of a point, which is, I mean, that could be the laboratory error. I mean, it's like nothing, right? So yeah, what to make of that? I mean, I think, you know, the idea that if you take SARMs, they don't affect your HPA axis, I think maybe we need to second guess that. Again, I'm not an expert. This is an N of one situation. Every male is so different. But yeah, I think it's worth looking at, worth considering. And then with that in mind, if SARMs are going to suppress your output anyway, my thinking has always been, and I could be wrong on this, then why not just do gear anyhow? Like, why not just maybe just run test 150 milligrams a week or 200? Like, if it's going to suppress you anyway, why not just do the real deal, and why beat around the bush? Again, that's clearly my bias, because I you know, enjoy being on test. I'm not on it now. But yeah, it's kind of a more tried and true way of going about it. Again, SARMs they have a place, obviously, you know, for certain people in certain situations. But
yeah. And the SARM that I was taking, Ostarine, it's considered the most mildest of all SARMs. So it was supposed to have the most mildest results with the most mildest suppression. And when I saw that, I was like, that doesn't seem very mild. But, you know, seeing the free testosterone not move much at all, would that kind of, I mean, I'm not going to say that it makes everything okay, but like, is it okay to put some more weight into the free testosterone by looking at that and then not ignoring the total, but saying like, oh, my total is pretty shot, but it's okay because my free is still pretty healthy or high? Or
sure,
you know what I mean?
No, I get what you're saying. I
guess what I'm really getting is I'm just trying to compare, like, which one's more important.
I think the free is more important, for sure. And it looks like you had the direct measurement, which is good. So yeah, I think and so the free will give a little bit more of an insight into how you feel on a everyday basis and stuff like that. So yeah, because, you know, the total can be influenced by the binding globulins and everything that I was referring to earlier. So, so yeah, now a free of like 9, is it ideal? Probably not. Are you gonna be able to function throughout the day? Yeah, but recovery and all that sort of stuff. Like you said, I mean, I think I would have expected it to be a little bit higher. But again, the way that SARMs are working is really on the androgen receptor level. So it's not like they're really, to my knowledge, driving up systemic hormone output. They're just tinkering with the receptors, which is, it sounds revolutionary, like a breakthrough. It sounds pretty novel. But again, yeah, I think keep it in mind. But, you know, what we did, you know, your LH and FSH, I mean, the good thing on that is they didn't change too much. Your TSH, your thyroid, DHEA stayed around the same. So, yeah, so I don't think your HPA axis is that suppressed. I mean, if we saw huge numbers, huge swings there. So I think that's the good thing. But it is pretty curious that your total didn't, I mean, that it did drop quite a bit.
Yeah. And so like when we had you on the podcast, you know, and you had this kind of the same thought. It's like, if you're going to do anything, you might as well just do juice. I actually used you for the promo in SARMageddon. Has your opinion changed at all as you watch SARMageddon?
Gosh, yeah. I mean, initially too, I mean, Tony Huge, he's a smart guy. You know, he really knows his stuff. I'm really impressed, you know, the interview that you guys had with him. But to be honest, maybe I'm old school, man. I mean, I'm always doubtful of new stuff. Like when keto came on, I was doubtful. When intermittent fasting started coming out, I was doubtful at first. So that's just kind of, I'm always skeptical of these new things. We know many great physiques have been built using historical anabolics, right? And again, I'm not advocating high dose anabolic usage. I think so many people can get so much out of just HRT level dosages, and things like that. And I think, people have been doing that. It has a long track record. I mean, there's people that have been running 100 to 200 milligrams or more of test a week for a long time, and they're still living, they're functioning normally. I think this realm of SARMs, where it sounds really innovative, there's no interconversion of different hormonal metabolites. It's just working on the receptor level. It sounds really quite fascinating. And I definitely am open to the idea of learning more. But again, I'm kind of a kind of old school, like do what works. And kind of like we talked about, Andrew, is, part of what some of the HRT bioidentical hormone doctors speak about is when you're doing HRT, say you have low T, we probably have low estrogen too. So if you just affect the androgen receptor, well, what about some of the health benefits? I mean, we talk about how estrogen is bad, you don't want too much and all that, but there's some benefits when it comes to joint health, even brain health, of having estrogen around. So, I think, I don't know long-term what's going to be better. I mean, I know some people though, having a little bit of estrogen is a good thing, and they get more joint side effects when they take an anti-estrogen, like a Arimidex, for example, things like that. So has my perception totally changed? I would say now I'm much more open-minded and, interested in the idea of it and all that. Would I personally, if I given the option, if someone said, hey, here's 150 milligrams of testcypionate or enanthate or a SARM, I'm going to go with the test, me personally. Mm-hmm. But that's just my bias,
Yeah. So with my labs and my markers and everything in mind, would you have an opinion on a post-cycle therapy for that?
Ooh, great question. Again, I'm kind of old school with, I would do HCG, probably 3,000, a little bit higher than what most people say. 3,000, I use every other day for maybe 2 weeks or so. I would do the Clomid as well. If you don't have side effects, kick it off with 100 milligrams every other day for the first week or so, and then back down to say 50 milligrams. But then also, Andrew, in addition to these different pharmaceuticals, sleep. Making sure you're getting to bed at the same time every night. Like, don't go out on the weekends. Really cut back on alcohol. And not that you drink much at all, I doubt. But
I don't drink at all.
Keep the training. Hit the sauna. Really maximize the lifestyle stuff. Get off the phone at night. If you are on the computer at phone, I know you edit videos, which is great. I do that too. And sometimes we're on screens. So get your blue light blocking glasses. Yep. I mean, there's so much we can do. Even the Juve light, the photobiomodulation. So I was super skeptical of that. And that almost doubled my free testosterone in total, which I was super impressed with. So yeah, I mean, I would say don't underestimate the lifestyle stuff, because the body will bounce back. You're resilient, you're young, you're hitting the weights, like you're causing that demand. So yeah, I mean, I think the HCG and Clomid would be helpful though.
Yeah. How much do you think, like lack of sleep actually could cause a dip in testosterone levels?
It's pretty profound. I mean, from some of the studies, just me personally, I've noticed, like I used to be a sales rep and I was traveling around like from Seattle to Toronto, Seattle to Chicago. And I noticed just like that circadian rhythm disruption would kill my morning wood. And so that for me is a proxy that my testosterone is getting tanked. But some of the studies have shown that it can drop it like by 30 or 40%, just like sleep deprivation. So
got it. So, but not 400.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. Here's the thing, because we would expect to also see other changes, right? So what's an outlier is your total testosterone. Like everything else didn't change as much, but there's this huge, if you look at the amount of deviation, it's an outlier. So it's like, number one, anytime there's an outlier like that, I recommend retesting, because these tests there's laboratory error. Maybe someone didn't spin a pipette right or test tube or whatever. So keep that in mind. But that one does seem like, wow, that's an outlier. What's up with that? So yeah, I would just look into that and just follow it. You know what I mean? The last thing we kind of talked about is your DHEA sulfate. It's not that it's on the low side, but the late Charles Poliquin, mutual friend of ours, and Chris and Mark are friend with Charles, and he was a mentor to me way back in the day in Colorado. And so, he would say that even athletes had low testosterone, if they supplemented with DHEA, he found them to perform a lot better. So you might feel a little bit better just subjectively taking like 20 to 40 milligrams of a DHEA sulfate first thing in the morning. And I personally take that. I mean, I feel like I'm almost on testosterone, when I take that. I'll be 37 soon. And like, I love my DHEA, man. I take 40 milligrams every day. Makes me feel great. So my recovery is way better.
That's awesome.
Hopefully I can prolong when I need to hop on TRT.
Yeah. It's so crucial. Like, everyone's been reaching out to me, and I just been responding with like, okay, like, show me your lab work, or you need to get lab work, because I felt great throughout this whole experience. I didn't experience one side effect at all. And then as I was like coming down towards the end of the cycle, the idea was I was actually going to start taking a more potent SARM, like like right into it, just like a chain smoker, right? I was just going to grab the next bottle and keep going. And we were actually in LA at Gold's when I got the email of my labs that had come back, and I start checking, and I'm like, uh-oh. Like, okay, maybe I'm not going to take more SARMs. So that's when like the whole like slight panic came in. So I just wanted to take this opportunity again to like advise people, like, dude, on the outside, on the surface, everything was great. I was getting bigger, I was getting stronger, I was getting faster, but my labs told me a totally different story. And, thankfully I have guys like you around me. I have, Mark and everybody to like really just be like, hey dude, calm down. Cause like, when we spoke on the phone, hopefully I didn't sound too jittery, but like, dude, I was pretty nervous. So I'm like, Mike, like, hey, yeah. So I'm like, hey dude, like, seriously, like, what's going on here? So you talked me off the ledge. So thank you for that. So for anybody that maybe they did follow everything I did, whether they got labs or they didn't, but let's say that their labs look the exact same way. We know how to control the hematocrit, the hemoglobin, and a couple other things that you said are the really big words that I can't pronounce. How can we control the insulin spike?
Yeah, great point there, Andrew. And and I'll just say it's normal when you get abnormal labs to be a little bit concerned. I've had this elevated tumor biomarker that I can't figure out is why it's elevated since 2016. And so we got to be mindful though that these labs are sometimes imperfect. But the cool thing is, like, when we start tweaking our diet and our lifestyle and our nutrition and potential, SARMs or HRT, whatever, we're going to swing these back into normal, right? So it's like, you're going to be able to bounce back, no problem. But yeah, with regards to the insulin, so, again, I'm a little biased, pro low carb, high fat, ketogenic style diet. Compressing the feeding window could be good. But the thing is, Andrew, you didn't have other patterns of high triglycerides and all these things, and liver enzymes weren't creeping up yet. So I'm not as concerned about it for you. Obviously, we want to get your fasting insulin down. The gold standard would be a 2-hour glucose tolerance test, looking at glucose and insulin to see what your body's doing. But I would suggest just maybe for a short period of time, just carb cycle. So just make sure that when you're having your carbs, it's like an intra workout or post workout, making sure your sleep's on track. You can try the berberine hydrochloride. That can be pretty effective. About a gram or 1,500 milligrams on the higher end of berberine hydrochloride is really effective. There's the drug that actually has good longevity research, metformin. You could consider. It works so similar to berberine. You wouldn't want to take both. And then I think you have the berberine. So you could try that. The myo-inositol, that you have as well. That's this B vitamin that actually has some pretty cool effects in affecting in a favorable way this insulin sensitivity and blood sugar regulation. So those are some natural things people can do. But I'm very confident in the fact that, you start donating blood, course correct, you're going to be fine with that. But because all these diseases, diabetes, they take decades to, until you have renal failure and neuropathy, and you can't move your toes and all this. You're nowhere near that. It's just, I know you want to have kids, you want to stay healthy, you want to stay on top of your game. So that's why it's smart that you're making these decisions. And I'll just say as a side step, if you were a professional bodybuilder, right? If you had aspirations, the genetics, the drive to get on stage, we kind of talked about this. Your labs wouldn't, it'd be like, they're a little bit on the high end of normal. But again, like for you to achieve some certain really extreme physical goal, you could probably manage this for a short period of time. But I asked you, like, when do you want to have kids? What are your plans for your family? So you're taking a different life path, which I think in 30 years, you'll be grateful that you did that. But other people have goals physically, right? And they're willing to compromise potential, having kids or this or that, or they want to postpone all that sort of stuff. So I think it's, looking at this in context is helpful. There's no right or wrong way. We can do what we want with our bodies, right? But I think as a father myself, I think you're making the right move, given your goals of wanting to have a family.
So would you have the same thought when it comes to the cholesterol then?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that kind of concerns me is your family history, your father, based upon, so kind of like what we talked about. In the next few months, you might want to get a baseline through Cleveland Heart Labs or Boston or Berkeley Heart Labs and look at your advanced particles and then retest that when you retest your iron. So maybe donate blood once or twice before you retest, and then get a really good baseline of kind of where things are at, because a first degree relative with, I think it was bypass surgery your father had.
Yeah. Due to some form of high cholesterol. I wish I knew more about it.
No, it's fine. I mean, yeah, but so that's what concerns me, is the familial first degree relative. So
how about we just talked about it on the podcast. It was, I think, getting a calcium score. Is that along the same lines?
Yeah, so that would be a more advanced functional test. So you could do the carotid IMT, so the two tests. So coronary artery calcium score, and then the carotid intermedial thickness, CIMT. So those are two great functional tests that would give you a good insight into that. For people listening too, there's also the arterial vascular elasticity test. I've had that done on myself. A buddy of mine does that, and so that actually looks at, if you think about a garden hose, like an old garden hose that's been sitting in the sun for 20 years, it's going to be really rigid, right? And that would happen if you never donated blood. If you continued what you were doing and had really thick, stagnant blood, your arterial system would become thick, and then you can create things like a heart attack or things like that. So, but those functional tests are super helpful. So I'm sure, did Stan kind of talk about that, the CIMT?
Yeah. He joked around about how the first time he got it done, it was like $1,500. And then Mark was like, oh, I just got one done for like $70. So when they were talking about that, I was like, maybe I need to go ahead and get myself one of those tests too.
It's smart. I mean, I know you're a young guy in your 30s, but it's like with the first degree relative, it's good. I think all these things give you a nice baseline. Mm-hmm. And then that way, it's like scientific wellness is what it is. It's like you're really being evidence-based about your diet and your lifestyle.
Cool. All right. Last couple questions. Do you have any benefit if SARMs are good? Meaning, if we talked just now and you said that my lab work was good, do you benefit at all from saying that my labs are not that bad?
No way. No, I'm not in any way, shape, or form financially affiliated with SARMs in any way.
Cool. So even if they were great or if they were bad, it would not matter, right?
And I would be surprised. I'm really intrigued to know. It's just more of a intellectual curiosity at this point. But yeah, I'm not. If I don't benefit. If it was amazing, I don't.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to bring that up because lately, this whole series, I had been looking for an antagonist, and like somebody would say something, and I'd reach out like, "Hey, can we talk about this on camera?" And then crickets. I did have somebody, and it almost worked out, and it didn't quite work out. So I wanted to reach out to basically somebody with no stake in the game whatsoever when it comes to SARMs, and somebody who knows what the hell they're talking about. Obviously, everyone just heard you say so much awesome stuff. I'm gonna have to go back and like take notes for my own damn video. But so somebody smart enough to analyze my blood work, who has been in the game, who kind of understands gear. So I can't thank you enough, dude. Like, this was so important for this whole series, just so that way people can see like, hey, I'm not promoting SARMs. I'm just documenting my entire experience, positive and negative. So literally the antagonist has been inside me the whole time, which is my lab work and what SARMs have been doing to me. Cause like that's all I'm trying to do is just like literally log everything I'm doing, my whole experience. Cause this whole thing started because it was, one side saying, SARMs don't work and you get worse side effects than steroids. The other side saying they work just as good, 0 side effects. And I'm happy that you and I are both sitting here saying like the answer is somewhere in the middle. Yes, you do get some benefits, but they're not foolproof. But at the same time, you're not going to die because you took some SARMs. And when we had Stan Efferding here, I think a lot of like the old school anabolic users, they have a hard time with SARMs because when someone like me says, oh, they're a safer option because they're not going to mess up your prostate, your estrogen levels are going to be intact, as shown in my lab work, or close to intact. I know you read off some other markers that I would have even had no idea what the hell those were. So thank you for that. So when I say they're safer, I'm not saying that they're safe. And that's what Stan had said. He's like, people think, they're saying they're safe. It's like, well, I'm not saying they're safe. I just say like, it could potentially be a safer option than full on steroids. And I hope that with this video, with your breakdown, your analyzation, I can't even speak. It's such a long day today. I hope we clarified a lot of that. Where can people find you if you have anything to plug? I know you sent me some awesome products that I've been taking. What the hell did you send me exactly?
Well, first of all, Andrew, I'm happy to do this stuff, man. I love labs. I've had doctors send me labs since I didn't even know what lab work was. And my mentor taught me what to say to the doctors, and I would go back. And so I've been doing this for like 15 years. But so I have a YouTube channel as well, Hight Intensity Health, and I'm on Instagram, metabolic_Mike. So if you guys listen, want to reach out, that'd be awesome. I've shared on some of those videos, my gear usage and stuff that I did. We used to make finna out of cow pellets, tren out of cow pellets, and I used to sell it to people and stuff like that in our fraternity. Like I used to do some really stupid stuff. So I've learned a lot over the course of, being involved in fitness. But I do have a supplement company too. I mean, if anyone is interested. So the berberine and the myo-inositol. So so for those, I would suggest taking like 2 caps of the berberine with dinner later in the day. We get more insulin resistant as the day goes on. And then that myo relax and calm, which is a formula that it's basically an electrolyte with the myo-inositol in it. So you get taurine, magnesium. So it should help sleep. We know sleep is just really foundational for everything in our body, especially testosterone and recovery. So 2 scoops of that you should be sleeping good. And and just retest. I mean, those were you didn't absolutely need those. Those were just like, hey, we talked about it. I thought I'd throw it out there, and just because I know you're doing labs, you can kind of tinker with those. But people can do so much just with their diet and exercise. But supplements, they can. I mean, the berberine data on that berberine product. I mean, the research is incredible. It's comparable to metformin, and which is a medication that's used for diabetes. So it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I'm excited to take it. And I will have some lab work for you to analyze again.
Sweet.
We might not film it or anything. It'll just be for us to look at so we can, we don't have to post everything. But it'll be interesting to see, I might just do it like a month after. I might do it, a month and then a following month, just to really keep track of everything and try to get healthy again. And just stop being so damn paranoid.
It's tough, man. I totally get it, but you shouldn't be paranoid, Andrew. I mean, the only thing that is worth fretting over is the iron and the hematocrit, the ferritin, right? So just donating blood's going to drop that down. Your insulin's going to drop right back down. I mean, it's not a problem. These things, it's amazing how quickly lifestyle changes affect labs. Like it's powerful. I mean, it's really motivation to, eat the right foods and get to bed on time and do all that good stuff. Yeah,
Mike, seriously, dude, I cannot thank you enough. Dude, like this was amazing. Going to be the highlight of the whole damn series. Thank you so much, man.
Heck yeah.
All right.
Hey, my pleasure.
All right. I'll talk to you later, brother.
See ya.
Peace.